Hey y'all, this is Jonathan of Beards and Bugles Outdoors. Just wanted to tell you guys a little bit about a trip me and Jake made and a kayak that we used to do it. There's a video on the channel already of that trip. It's a little bit of a turkey hunt / float trip through the wilderness. It was a great time. We always wanted to make the trip. We just we're not made of money, so we didn't have money to go throw away on a nice raft. And we were a little nervous about doing it on a subpar raft or a cheap raft or anything like that. So we just didn't make the trip. And it's been a few years since we've been talking about doing it, and we just haven't done it until this year. My wife and I were in Walmart and we saw this 2-person kayak on the shelf, and it looked pretty cool. You know, it had a rise in the front and back, shed some of the water, keep it off of you. It was inflatable tubes on the sides with an inflatable floor and a couple seats, and it came with 2 oars and a real lightweight pump. Real basic kayak, but it looked cool. It looked like it was worth a shot. And it was $150 or somewhere right around there, maybe $149. And as it turns out, you could buy it online and pick it up in the store, probably the same kayak off the same shelf, but you could get it for half price. So here we are. We spent about $75, I think, bought it online, went and picked it up in the store, and it's the Intex Sierra K2. Went ahead and bought the kayak, called Jake and said, hey, this is cool. Are you going to do this? Because I'm doing it whether you're coming or not. I'll be making a 40+ mile trip by myself through the wilderness if you don't. So, and sure enough, Jake was like, oh yeah, I'm doing it. So he went online, did the same thing, paid whatever it was, $70 to $75, went and picked it up in the store. We ended up with the same kayaks, and that's where our trip kind of started. We weren't sure how it was going to work out. So we took our backpacks. We both have nice packs. We both have Exo Mountain Gear packs. We treated our packs and our gear as the second man in the kayak, and we bought a few kind of cheap dry bags, which kind of stupid. I don't know why we bought cheap dry bags when we had expensive cameras with us, but that's what we did. Packed our cameras in some dry bags, packed some extra food, packed some extra things that we needed. And we set out thinking, I wonder how far we're going to make it before we have to start backpacking out of the wilderness. So we did it. We had my dad drop us off at the top end, and we set off into the wilderness. The first day, I forget how far we went. We didn't go very far. We just kind of were testing everything out, testing how our gear would work. And we camped. And when we camped, we didn't bring tents. We brought rain flies for tents, basically. And we slept in our kayak, slept in a boat like Jesus did. If y'all don't know that story, go look up Mark chapter 4, verse 38 through 40. It's real short, but it's really cool. If you read before that and after that, it might explain a little more for you, but definitely worth reading. One of my favorite stories in the Bible. Anyway, we slept in the boat like Jesus did. Not exactly like Jesus did, but we slept in a boat. And with our rain flies over us. It never rained, but that's what we did. The next day, we set out from there, and we hit some things. We hit some trees. We hit some root balls, which, if you don't know what that is, it's basically like the root base of a tree that had been uprooted, and there's some sharp things on it. Or if it's been there a long time and has some soil in it, there might be some grass and different vegetation on it. But anyway, rocks. The river had flooded pretty hard, so it was spread out. So the water was shallow in a lot of places, and that made for a lot of rock strikes on the bottom of the kayak. And I don't know if it was a rock or a stump or what, but it had soil and it had vegetation on top. And I just messed up and didn't avoid it, and I ended up on top of it, and my kayak spun around and then went forward again. Didn't flip it, didn't do anything crazy, but I think that messed up the floor of the kayak. I say I think because it was sometime after that I realized that the floor was starting to sag. So the way it's built, there's two side chambers, two big tubes on each side of the kayak. And then there's a floor that is much like the old styles of pool rafts, where there's multiple tubes in it, but they're all one chamber. That's kind of the weak point that I see of the kayak after this trip, so I'll explain more about that. But I ended up with two little bitty small seam tears basically, and that was on that second day. My floor of my kayak leaked early on in the day. I hit some kind of stump with vegetation on top, like grass and stuff, and I've got one little seam tear right there. Probably can't even see it. Right there. And I've got one little bit bigger, but not much, right there. So pumped it up, threw it in the water real quick, flipped it back over, and you could see it bubbling up from both of those spots. So I just went with it because the floating integrity of the kayak was just fine, but the floor sagged. Well, if you've ever kayaked, every time you go to push off, when you go to throw your leg back in the kayak, you're putting a bunch of water in the floor of the kayak. Well, that was pooling up instead of shedding off of that raft base. It was pooling up because there was no air in the bottom of that, and that floor would sag. And you know, you're only sitting on, I don't know what it is, between 2 and 3 inches of inflatable padding. That's your chair. So you're sagging, and all that water's coming to you or to the weight of your gear. So your gear might be getting wet depending on how you have it set up, or at least you're getting wet, whatever. It was fun. So we made a stop because there was a strainer that was really bad, that we had to go around, and we had to pack our gear a ways. We couldn't even line our rafts because that strainer covered the complete side of that, and there was just no way to line it. Anyway, so we carried all our gear. I flipped my kayak over, and I was kind of halfway lazy, but halfway just trying something out. I had some tape with me. Now I forget what kind of tape it was, but it was some tape that was supposed to be like a Flex Seal type tape. I put that on there instead of putting any kind of cement. I just put that on there by itself. I thought this stuff seals by water. I thought the moisture would help, and it would bind it up. It didn't. It still leaked after that. And then I got even stupider and went to trying to cake stuff on there, and it just I basically ruined my chances of fixing those leaks. So I tried cementing it, gave it all night to cure, and I think I had already done too much damage. So anyway, I slept on the ground, and it was miserable. I just couldn't I'm a side sleeper, couldn't get comfortable. So sleeping in that kayak was the way to go. And I recommend it. If you got a 2-man kayak or enough room for you to lay in there, especially if you're a side sleeper like I am. I can't sleep on a beach very well for very long. So that was really nice being able to sleep in the kayak. When I couldn't, that was kind of miserable. I gave up on it after that. The next day, I just went with it, didn't bother with it. I can't remember if Jake's kayak, he ended up with seam tears either that third day. I think it was that third day he ended up with seam tears. I only brought one oar, but I ended up finding an oar on the side of the river, so I brought that with us just in case we broke one or something. I brought both my seats because they're inflatable, so the one that I wasn't using, I just kept it rolled up, shoved in there. And I brought the pump that it comes with because it's a little bulky, but it packs down really light. It didn't cost us any extra weight, and it was handy because there were a few times we needed it. Well, I took that second seat out that next night. I was not about to sleep on the beach if I didn't have to. So I took that second seat out, inflated it, laid them both flat, so the back and the seat, because they have seat backs on them, both of them laid flat inside the kayak, balled my hoodie or something up as a pillow. So this time, I pulled out my extra seat cushion that I had crammed up in I'm going to call it the bow, and inflated them both and put them down. I think I'm going to do a lot better tonight. And I was able to sleep that night in my kayak, and man, I slept so much better. It was great. So we hit lots of rocks, and the further we got into the trip, the more I guess courageous we got with our kayaks, because we were thinking, okay, less and less we would have to walk out if we lost our kayaks. So things started getting a little more fun, but I mean, it was like you'd bottom out on a rock and you'd scoot yourself off of it, or you'd come in so quick that you'd bottom out, but you're just dragging across those rocks, or banging into rocks and banging into trees and root balls. A lot of it you just couldn't help. So we just had a good time with it. We kept going. And through all of that, the main integrity of the Intex Sierra K2, which are those side tubes, those side chambers, the big pontoon style side chambers that come on a kayak, they never flattened. Now, we didn't try to go running them into stuff. We didn't try to flatten them. We tried to protect them, but the bottom line is we hit all kinds of stuff, brushed up against all kinds of stuff, and those tubes held. And because of that, we never had to carry our weight out of the wilderness. And I'm extremely thankful for that. If I had it to do all over again, would I still use the Intex Sierra K2 from my first time? Yeah, yeah, I would. Knowing what the weak point of it is, I would probably do something different with it. Whether that's find a way to spray the bottom with some kind of flexible type spray, or something either on the bottom, or maybe putting like a foam pad inside. I don't know. I'd have to try some things, and I probably will, but yeah, I'd still do it again. It was a great time. A lot of the fun of that trip was taking a kayak that I only spent $75 on for 40 plus miles, and we did it ×2 with all our gear and everything, and seeing if we could make it without having to walk out, and we did. So yes, I would try it again. Right now the Amazon price is like $95. Again, I got mine at Walmart. Jake got his at Walmart. I did get a hold of Intex on social media to ask them. First I was telling them a little bit about the trip, and then I asked them if the Intex Explorer K2 was the same kayak basically, and maybe it was just a marketing thing, because it looks like the same build. The only thing different is the color and markings. I don't have one here to compare them, but just from what I'm looking at online, the only thing I see different are the color and markings. And Intex sent me back a generic response of, hey, if you have any questions, contact our customer support at the website. And I was like, oh, okay. I did that, sent them an email basically explaining the trip, telling them it worked, and then asking if it was the same as the Explorer. They haven't responded. It's been, gosh, I don't know. It's been months, I think. Like maybe 2 months. No response. So that's kind of lame. But as far as whether or not this would work for you, I mean, it's a great kayak. $95 on Amazon. You can find it cheaper. I found it for $75. Or you could go with the Explorer. There's lots of videos out there on the Explorer. There's basically nothing on the Sierra. And so I don't know if that's a marketing thing. It's just for a certain company or whatever. But all right, how do we secure our gear? Well, there's not a lot of lashing points or anything like that on the Sierra. You have some ropes and stuff at the front. You have a handle at the front and the back, and you have your seats. Your inflatable seats have straps on them to where the back curves forward and kind of cradles you, and that strap buckles on each side of the kayak. There's some in the front and there's some for the back seat. Because there were no good lashing points and I wanted my gear to ride in the middle, not in the front, or at least the heavy gear in the middle, not in the front, I think both of us had to get a little creative. And so I don't remember what Jake did. I think he did kind of the same thing, but I secured paracord to those front and back, which is in the middle, front and middle buckles that are for the seats. I secured it through like the strap part where it meets the buckle. I didn't put ropes across. I just used the buckles because my pack is made for hauling stuff inside and out. So I strapped those buckles, those straps and buckles from the pack through the paracord on each side. Also secured some dry bags and stuff to the front through the little ropes and stuff that are connected to the Sierra. Yeah, if you rolled it over, that meant you had some gear kind of on its own floating, but it was all tied together, so you were able to just gather it all back up. It worked okay. It wasn't the most ideal thing. I wish it had a rope or some connecting points throughout the side of that, but $75, I mean, you're not looking for a multi-day kayak. I just did it. So I'm sure you could do the same. Would I recommend you to buy the Intex Sierra K2 for a level 2 to 3 whitewater rafting trip where you're going to be hitting rocks and stuff? No, I wouldn't recommend it. I would say if you're adventurous and you don't mind walking, or you're good at patching them or whatever, then yeah, it'd be fun. It's a fun trip, fun way to make a trip. Would I recommend it for you for kayaking on a creek without rocks, a slow moving, or on a lake? Absolutely. It worked great for that. It comes with a skeg so that you can kind of, that's the little fin that goes on the bottom. That kind of stabilizes your movements and helps you line out across a lake or something like that. A little harder to control without that skeg on there. So, but yeah, it'd be great for that. I think the only reason we had any issues was because of how rough the bottom was and how much we were rubbing. And the second thing is I pulled the handle off of the front, because those handles aren't made for dragging your gear weight. They're just made for moving and carrying the kayak itself, which is pretty light. But I was dragging it up on shore with my gear in it from that handle. And so the handle broke and the other one started to break. So that's not fair. That's not the way it was made. That didn't break because of a flaw on their part. It broke because I was using it inappropriately, basically. So, but other than that, thing was great. So if you need a boat and a bed, call it B&B. We'll call it water B&B. Then yeah, then it makes a good kayak for that. So I'll probably be getting a better kayak, one that's a little more made for whitewater, and we'll be doing more trips like this. I know Jake and I both talked about doing more of it. So, all right, thanks for watching this video. We do all kinds of outdoor activities all the time, from horseback riding, which we haven't done any videos on that, but a lot of horseback, a lot of rugged mountain hikes and rides, float trips, hunting and fishing. Most of our content is about hunting. If you're not into hunting, I hope you're able to find something in the channel of value. We post a lot of shorts and reels of wildlife, not hunting, just enjoying wildlife. So hopefully you can stick around for that. We're not trying to offend anybody by our hunting and fishing and stuff. It's just who we are. It's what we do. But there's lots of other outdoor things we do too. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you on the next one.